we will be now moving into the NFC record predictions that we're going to shoot on a different day, but it's all going to be the same video. So thank you guys so much for watching. We're about to get into that right now. Now we're moving in to the NFC. We're back on a different day, a Saturday morning, and we're going to start off with the NFC East. Dobbs, start us off here with the Dallas Cowboys. Where did you have them record-wise, and do they make the playoffs?
Okay, so we got some positives and some negatives for some Cowboys fans here, because I think, I don't think they're going to like the record that much, but they didn't, they're still making the playoffs, so we can't complain that much. I got the Cowboys rounding out at 9-8 on my schedule prediction. And again, Cowboys fans, saying it out loud, right? Honestly, I do think that there's a pretty good chance you guys will finish better than 9-8. But irregardless, making the playoffs and finishing as the playoff team or one of the playoff teams is really all that matters at the end of the day. So, you know what? Going through the schedule predictor, Cowboys schedule, honestly, a lot of games in there that are they're just tough. And when you feel like that the Cowboys have, again, as me and Hunter have kind of alluded to this whole offseason, it's not a big regression, but, back to the all-in thing, and they haven't really built off of last season. And, the whole thing around guys that still need to get paid. I mean, there's a lot of contingencies around the Cowboys right now. I think the bottom line is, though, more than anything else, you didn't improve. And again, this is what we've been saying all offseason. You didn't improve. Meanwhile, or at least significantly, all the other teams in the division, except, despite the fact that the Giants are still doing with Daniel Jones, still upgrading outside of that area. When you're the Cowboys in that division and you didn't make those jumps, that's where these questions are going to come from. But again, still making the playoffs, still a playoff team, but with contingencies around them where I just don't think this team's as strong as they used to be.
I think my main thing with the Cowboys is I also have them 9-8. I have them missing the playoffs, and kind of to go with what you said, they could very easily make the playoffs. But when you look at their schedule, the only wins that I see is maybe NOLA. You have the Giants, obviously, but we know the Cowboys sometimes fold against teams that are basement teams. You're going to play Pittsburgh, but they always put up a tough fight. Atlanta, maybe. Washington. Obviously, you have Washington and the Giants twice. And you play Carolina, but outside of those, I don't see any wins that they're just going to be able to walk in there and dominate. Obviously, from what I've been seeing, like Tyler Guyton's been looking nice, and Cooper Beebe has as well. But I don't doubt that the CeeDee Lamb deal will be worked out before the season. But when you look at that wide receiver room, you look at that running back room, you realize that I have confidence that Mike Zimmer can run a confident defense. But you also did lose Dan Quinn, who was making a lot of that defense. And yes, they fell apart later in the year. But overall, Dallas still has a really talented team. I just think in terms of the fact of what have they been 12-5 the last 3 years or something like that, with all the changes, with all the contract stuff going on and the strength of their schedule, they strike me as a team with a little bit more volatility. But I want to say, like, with the Cowboys, their floor is very high, like, for what they're going to be. Like, no way do I see this team below 9 wins. Like, I kind of picked the floor this year for them.
No, I would say I would agree with that 100%. And what I want to go back to that you just said is, and this was what I was going to touch on next. My big thing with the Cowboys is this, and I want to preface it with saying Tyler Guyton, some of the reps that I've seen, right, compared to when you watch him last year, like, you're like, oh man, like they like that progression, as we figure, that's what the Cowboys staff does. This is what we said the whole draft process, right? Which is why you wouldn't mind them taking a guy like Tyler Guyton. But from what he looked like last year in college to what he looks like right now, you can see the world of growth he's already going through. You can see the way he's finishing blocks, the way he's staying on his block. Like, he looks so much more zoned in and alert to where he needs to be. And it's a great sight if you're a Cowboys fan, because he just looks like a different player than last year already, which is awesome. But with that, again, and I want to also say, like, Cooper Beebe, I have plenty of faith, and I think Cooper Beebe is going to be a good pro as well. But the problem is, regardless of all that, they're both rookies this year. And you can't necessarily expect rookies that have a good future to just come in and, right, be cornerstones of that season right from week one and be dominating the opposition, because likely, as good as their future is, that just isn't what's going to happen. So you're dealing with two rookies on the O-line. in a division full of tough D lines. Number one, so let's just start there. You're facing a really tough D lines a majority of the year. Okay, I'm not going to we won't put the Commanders in there. But when you face the Eagles and the Giants, you're facing two really good D lines 4 times a year at that point. So we add that on top of the fact that, like you said, the non-division games are very tough, very hard games. I mean, you know, and there's also a lot of positives for the Cowboys that we could touch on too, like that are also like, oh well, what if positives? Like, what if Mozzie Smith makes a big jump this year, and all of a sudden this Cowboys D line is consisting of just 4 game wreckers? I mean, that's a possibility as well. There's certainly more positive possibility. Like, what if Demarion Overshawn ends up being a terrific transition from safety to linebacker and ends up being a great fit in this scheme? I mean, there's a lot of positive what ifs too. So I want to give Cowboys fans kind of like a little, like we said, we picked the floor more than anything, but this team is still a good team, and this team still has no excuse not to make the playoffs.
Let me ask you this. I think you're going to get the best Dak Prescott that you're going to get because he's in a contract year. But also it feels like Dak could also not have the best year, and regardless, he's going to command $60 million. Do you see, and we don't have to go on this for too long, but do you see Dak Prescott being a Cowboy next year? Because it kind of feels like he's kind of checked out a little. Like, personally, like with his quotes in the media, like, I'm not saying that, oh, he's done with the Cowboys or anything like that. I'm not trying to be like yelling like this crazy hot take, like, oh, Dak's done with the Cowboys. But I don't know. The vibe I've gotten from just media and how he's talked about is kind of like, yeah, if they want me here, they're gonna pay me like they want me to be here. And if they don't believe in me, then I'm ready to move on because someone else will pay.
Well, see, you know what? I'm really glad you asked that, because I want to answer it with this. I think that Dak deserves to feel that way. And I think, for a lot of quarterbacks, I would maybe really wouldn't understand that angle. But with Dak, I really have to give credit where it's due. Look, when the man came in, literally the year him and Zeke came in, they transformed the Cowboys from a bottom feeder of the league for one season. And again, not was like a long period of being bad, but a really bad season into, oh, we're back to literally being the kings of the NFC record-wise for the regular season at 13-3. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that's how they finished. Him and Dak and Zeke's first year. And he brought the Cowboys back from the depths in 1 year. And, granted, it wasn't just him, obviously. It was the combination of talent that they brought in. But if you're Dak, you're saying to yourself, obviously, somewhere mentally, when I arrived here, positive things started happening. And on top of that, the Cowboys have been in I think we kind of associate the Cowboys, still a lot of people, especially Cowboys fans, back with the dynasty Cowboys, right? Like super high expectations every year. And if you don't meet those exact expectations, it wasn't right. But the reality is, we talk about, it's very hard to be the team that wins. It's very hard, right, to be that last team standing. And I think if you're Dak Prescott, you have to feel like, look, I'm doing everything I can to make this team the last team standing. And there hits a point where Jerry Jones has to do his job and also make sure that we have extra guys in the building here and here and here. However, as we always talk about, I also don't necessarily think that the angle he's taking of trying to be the highest paid quarterback is the best thing for the team. That's a whole other can of worms. But the bottom line is what I'm trying to say. I think I can understand Dak's angle of like, I really do deserve to get paid, and I do want to be here. But if I'm not here, it's really on them. Like, it's their loss. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's how he views it in his head. Like, look, if I'm not here, I'm not going to cry about it because I know that I've brought this team a lot of value.
The morbid, like, non-football, I guess, talk is like Jerry Jones isn't going to be alive forever. And if he wants to win another Super Bowl, they really have to do something. And losing a franchise quarterback gets you no closer to a Super Bowl than anything. So, I mean, if they really wanted to get the most out of Dak, I mean, I don't know how much you'd get for him, but if you really are content on not re-signing him, and it seems like the Cowboys are in positions with all their like stars right now where it's like they got scared off of that Zeke deal, so they didn't extend earlier than they need to. But now you have CD, Dak, and Micah all needing extravagant, exorbitant contracts that you're scared to give them. But any other team in the NFL would have just paid these guys already.
And then, and that's part of the problem. I'm glad you said too, because I almost forgot. It's kind of like the Zeke thing is where it all went wrong, right?
Yeah.
But that's where it's funny to me, Hunter, is everyone else, apparently, besides Jerry Jones, had already figured out that the long-term running back thing.
Not the thing.
In his defense, I guess, this was kind of right when it really first started becoming glaring.
This was the deal that killed it all.
This was the one that where it started becoming glaringly obvious.
Yeah.
But I think if you were looking at the NFL spectrum as a whole from a good like 20-year period, you would look at the longevity running backs. You did start to say to yourself, okay, like these guys can't be commanding 15 to 20 million a year for much longer. And it's going to hit a point where it's going to become glaringly obvious. And it did literally right after this deal was signed. But the bottom line is still, regardless, when you're the one making those decisions, back to Jerry's the one making those decisions. You got to be the one ahead of the 8 ball on this shit. Just like how, I got to toot our horn here for a second, Hunter. Just like how we've been ahead of the game for years on how quarterback contracts were not going to be a thing the way they've been for so long. And eventually there's going to be a cap on the contracts. And even now, there's probably still people like, what is this guy talking about? No, stay tuned. It's coming. I promise it's coming. Me and Hunter have been on this for years because you pay attention. You're like, that can't keep happening. A quarterback is not going to be able to get to the point where he's going to demand 80 million a season and that the whole cap's going to the fucking quarterback. But we'll get there eventually. You got to be able to see ahead when you're the one making those decisions, and he didn't. So you can't feel bad for him.
We move into the next topic. Like I think we'll even start to see that with wide receivers, where it's like if you're not a number one, you're not getting number one money. Like,
or even just, I'll give you the money, but take it for a year or two and then prove to me that it's worth a refry. Yeah. Like, I'm not just going to give you that money for half of a decade without any contingency on your end.
No. All right. Well, all the rest of the NFC East fans are sick about how much time we spent on the Cowboys. So let's get into a team that is just, I don't know. The New York Giants. I have them at 5-12. You also have them at 5-12. When you look at the Giants, right, it's tough because their schedule isn't necessarily the toughest thing in the world, but even games like New Orleans, even games like Atlanta, even games like Tampa Bay, right? Those teams are better than the Giants. And when you look at sorry, my nose is itching like crazy, man. My allergy, I was out for a walk. My allergies are going crazy.
Oh, but I'm on the same boat with allergies today, bro.
It's just like, okay, we get the Giants have a good D-line, right? Like a good D-line. They have a good D-line. You have Bobby Okereke. Okay, I like him. Their cornerback room and secondary is a problem.
Let's address the elephant in the room. Let's address the real problem with this Giants team is the DB room.
And I think when you look at offense, okay, you're either going to be playing Daniel Jones or Drew Lock. And they're going to be throwing to Malik Neighbors and handing the ball off to Devin Singletary. Like, they had Tyrone Tracy, and he got carted off. He's done for the year.
So sickening.
So it's just like, where is the hope for this team to actually have like a 500 season? We talked about it before, and I've heard other people talk about it. That season where they made the playoffs and won a game was the worst thing possible for their franchise because they got false hope. They thought their team was better than it was, and they've been the same team for the last couple years. The Evan Neal thing didn't work out. You have, their O-line. I mean, yeah, I like Andrew Thomas, but the rest of their O-line is just kind of eh.
I think, okay, I want to start with this is where I want to start because you nailed it. But not only did you nail it on one part, I'm gonna fill in the other part. You said, right, and we already addressed this. When they won that playoff game, it was the worst thing for the Giants. But you know who else was the worst thing for, Hunter? Giants fans. Because, and Giants fans, look, I want to be clear. Hey, game recognizes game. I've been on the side of it where, you know what, you're just desperately unrealistic because you want to have some hope. I respect it. I do. I really respect it. I respect that you ride for your team. That you love the big blue. I respect it. But I've seen these comments
big blue.
They need to be addressed, Hunter, because these Giants fans they're just unrealistic right now. It's just you got to be rooted in reality a little bit here. And the reality
really want
of the
this
situation,
team to stink if you're a Giants fan, honestly.
Well, I was going to say realistically, you have to be able to look at this roster and say, okay, look, we're missing crucial O-line pieces. We're missing the quarterback. We're missing a fair chunk of the receiving core. We're missing the entire DB core essentially at this point, right? And not the entire one, but most of. Besides what you just filled this year in the draft. And you're saying to yourself, we got a lot of work to do to get this roster to a competitive point, especially when you consider you play in the same division as the Cowboys and the Eagles, and now even I'll say the Commanders, where Jaden Daniels has looked damn good, and you don't know what to expect from them over the next few years. So you have to, at some point as a Giants fan, say, it's okay that we're not a playoff team right now. It's okay that we need to do a little bit of building. Because if you want to sit here as a Giants fan and tell me that you think this roster is ready to go compete, I don't know. I genuinely, I actually have no words. I really don't. I don't know how, you don't know. I guess you don't know how to evaluate the way your roster is constructed, because Giants fans, come on. And again, to Hunter's point, you have a fantastic D-line. There are strengths to this team. Like, you have a fantastic D-line. You have some O-line pieces for sure figured out. Like, you have Andrew Thomas. You have one of the best O-linemen in the league. Right? You have one of the future best receivers in the league neighbors. I don't want to make it seem like it's all negative, Giants fans. It certainly isn't. It's actually relatively positive. You're in a time where we already have so many contenders that you're going to be able to rebuild this window for a better time to compete in the near future. But as of right now, let's just keep it real, Hunter. The Giants are not ready to go compete. And Daniel Jones saga is going to be over at the end of this year, and it's going to be a whole new saga to keep your eye on. It's going to be having the new thing that the New York media is going to be all eaten up, and what the Giants fans are going to be eating up. And as much as they don't want to hear that, and they want to hold on to the belief that Daniel Jones is going to be the savior somehow at this point, it's not what's going to happen. And this is nothing, there's no negativity about Daniel Jones. Look, Daniel Jones is riding off in the sunset with 160 million. He can do whatever he wants. Daniel Jones doesn't have to play a snap again if he doesn't want to. But the bottom line is, this team is not ready to compete. And I don't know why I feel like so many Giants fans feel like this team is ready to compete. It's kind of the whole point of my spiel here.
I guess my thing is, like, when you look, and we'll get to the Commanders separately, but when you look at the Commanders roster compared to the Washington roster, or the Giants roster compared to Washington, Giants may have more high-end talent, but when you look for a piece-for-piece team, I would take the Commanders roster over the Giants roster in terms of just, the average quality of player, and regardless of age. I mean,
and depth.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big thing too. The Giants don't have a lot of depth.
And I get what they were trying to do with drafting Malik Neighbors, and I don't necessarily think that was the wrong pick. But I think the reasoning for it was wrong. Like, let's get Daniel a weapon and let's solidify this line in free agency. You didn't really solidify. I mean, you definitely made the line better, but it's not anything that Daniel Jones is going to be confident about behind. And Daniel Jones already looked like garbage in a preseason game. And, I used to be kind of the notion that the preseason was kind of useless. But then I started thinking about it. I'm like, but like, if your depth is playing bad, then like, what happens when a guy goes down during the season? And even your starters played bad. So is preseason really, and I understand it's very vanilla concepts and everything like that, but
no, that's what makes it worse though, Hunter. Yeah. To that point, that's what makes it worse is when you're doing the vanilla stuff, it should be ball in, ball out, simple. I understand how it works. And I just want to say real quick, I'm gonna let you finish, but that's why I had to say, that's what's so concerning about it, Hunter, is that it's the starters against the backups. And when the starters are doing the job against the backups, that's even more of a red flag.
Yeah.
It's down the alarms.
I think the Giants are inevitably going to go and get a quarterback in the 2025 draft. It's almost like, okay, let's say they're sitting at 6. They could have got McCarthy, Penix, or Nix. I don't know if any of those really would have been a great fit with Dable, but I don't know, is Ewers back or Sanders? Like, you know what I'm saying? Are they better fits? Like, I think Nix is going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be great in Sean Payton's system, but I'll tell you right now, I would have rather had Bo Nix than any of the quarterbacks coming out this year.
See, I'll say this. I'm always fair and honest. The one guy I give my props to right now to this upcoming class, I actually do think Carson Beck has some tools that I really like, where Carson Beck could actually end up being a really good pro. But to your point, I don't know if that Giants offense would be the spot for him regardless. So you know what I mean? I don't, and not that it couldn't be either necessarily. I just know, Dable wants his more necessary, probably wants his more mobile guys, and Carson Beck's not necessarily going to fit where I think Dable wants.
Let
So
me also say this. I think another thing with okay, I understand you let Saquon go. He's your best player, okay? One of your best offensive player, let's say. You go out and get Malik Neighbors. You arguably replace like an aging weapon with like a younger weapon, right? My problem, and this is something I feel like not really has been discussed, is your quarterback is already not great, okay? Now, what happens when you cannot establish a run game? They're just going to play the pass. And then you shut down the pass game. You can't move the ball. You're in a situation where it's like Daniel Jones even looks worse. Like, you see teams, like you saw the Texans go out and get Joe Mixon. So CJ Stroud doesn't have all the pressure in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, you see teams go out and get running backs to take pressure off the quarterback, right? Like, I think there was a big reason that the Colts extended Jonathan Taylor, so all the pressure is not on Anthony Richardson to be getting all the first downs. So when you get rid of that and you bring in Devin Singletary, who I've never really been a fan of, he doesn't even begin to replace Saquon. So it's just a kind of a very tough situation for that offense as well.
well, yeah, absolutely. And to finish it all off, back to the whole wrap it up with the point of I've already said, but you're trying to move the ball, passing or throwing behind an O line. It's just they're just not going to give you all the time in the world, to put it as nicely as possible. And it's Daniel Jones throwing the ball, and you lost Saquon. I mean, pile it all together. That makes a regression sandwich.
Yeah,
That makes a regression sandwich, Hunter.
I'm not looking forward to it. So sorry, Giants fans. I hope you prove us wrong. I just don't see how. Let's move on to the Philadelphia Eagles. We both have them making the playoffs. Dobbs, you have them at 12-5. I have them at 11-6. I think people are down on the Eagles because of what happened last year. And I think they remedied a lot of the issues. Something that I will say, though, that I do have concern about just personally is obviously you only know what the media tells you, and like we very well could be wrong about this, but I've heard from multiple people, just like through articles and everything, that like there's not good tension. There's not a good relationship between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. And I do feel like if there is a time where things get rough and Hurts is not really on board with Sirianni, I feel like there's a chance that there can be like some public disruption with this team, especially after what they're trying to do, because, they went to the Super Bowl in 22, they lost, and they've been trying to get back there ever since. They were like, 10-1 last year, but I think everyone knew they weren't really like a 10-1 team. So it's tough to see, but I do think that this team, if things don't go right, we could see it go in the other direction. But in terms of talent, like they have all the talent in the world to be one of the best teams in the NFL.
No, absolutely. And to that point, Hunter, I know that they've been doing a little bit of PR cleanup. They were riding on the cart together at practice. I seen a little bit of they're trying to they got in the meeting. They were like, "Oh wait, we can't have the media, distracting us with all this talk." But even though deep down we know that last season we had our disagreements, I think, look, to all those points, you can understand though, after why last year the two personality types would clash after what had happened, right? Like
Right.
it's totally understandable. I think if you have a good year this year, though, bottom line, you redeem that. You can redeem that relationship and move forward positively for sure. But it all depends. It really does all hinge on this year, because if things go south again, there will be major changes, and it will probably start with Nick Sirianni. But that's all. We're not getting. That's all further speculation that I don't think we have to get into, because we both agree that the Eagles are probably going to have a really good year this year. Therefore, Nick Sirianni would stay. So to just break into like why I feel like there's no debate here, that you could say that the Eagles are not a contender. The bottom line is this. Both, me, Hunter. We always got to start when a team has two great trench groups. That's always where I'm going to start. Right. The Eagles have two great trench groups, so that's the main thing you got to know, right? Like they have two great trench groups. But not only that, you not only have two of the best. We have Jalen Hurts, who's been making leaps every year. And yes, the offense last year held him back tremendously, and it was very hard to watch because it was a huge regression from the Shane Steichen offense. Nonetheless, Jalen Hurts was still playing pretty good ball, right? Still doing his thing and playing injured for a majority of the season. So I give credit where it's due, right? You still got Jalen Hurts. You add Saquon. I mean, we've already gone over this so many times. I also want to say too, because we talked about this before we started recording. Interestingly, starting outside corner, X corner for the Eagles right now on the depth chart, Keely Ringo, quite interesting. But this team is stacked. I mean, they're absolutely stacked. You added Vic Fangio. I mean, you added Vic Fangio
in a city like Philly. Like, they're gonna love Vic Fangio.
Yeah, just think about this for a second, and NFL fans, if you understand how important it is to have Vic Fangio in the building. Like the Eagles, they added Vic Fangio. Like this is not a little deal. This is like that's a pretty big deal. So it's like I was about to get crazy, but I'll leave it up. We'll see what happens next year. It'll be for the future. All I'm saying is this team is stacked, and if you were to argue that this team is not a contender, because the Eagles is actually just really simple. They're basically loaded everywhere. They don't really have any weak points. They really don't. The one weak point that they had, they absolutely just addressed it full force. They brought back Chauncey. They drafted a bunch of young D-backs with really high upsides that look like they're going to be playing a lot this year. I mean, realistically, Hunter, what even am I going to sit here and say negatively about the Eagles besides the potential negative relationships?
I've been hearing Zach Bond and Devin White have been balling out.
Yeah, and that's the craziest part too. I was saying I didn't even know that I liked where they're playing Zach Bond. I didn't know it. Oh no, go figure. Zach Bond can go play on the interior over in Philly. Apparently, the Saints just didn't know how to unlock him. But it's funny to that point. I mean, yeah. So even that group we were worried about, the linebackers, they look good. Everyone looks good. Where do we start with the negativity? Because there really isn't none for the Eagles.
Fangio, I felt when he was with the Bears, always got the most out of his linebackers. Like, I really felt like Danny Trevathan, until he started slowing down, like, he was really good for the Bears. Now, with that being said, I think I do really also like something we haven't talked about is the Jahan Dotson trade. To get him as your wide receiver 3, I think a change of scenery was kind of needed for him, and to learn from A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. For what they gave up for him was essentially like a 3rd-round pick. Not bad, because they got a 5th back. So it's a 3 and 2 7s for a Jahan and a 5th, which isn't bad. I mean, where is the negativity, Dobbs? I mean, I really think it just has to do with Nick Sirianni, because you have who's the OC? Kellen Moore.
I always want to say the last year's, and then I'm like, wait, it's Kellen Moore. Like, how am I forgetting that Kellen Moore? It was the Kellen and Vic. You know what I mean? The whole new reconstruction this year.
I think that is, if you want to talk about negativity, not necessarily has nothing to do with them. More of the fact is we know Sirianni is on the hot seat a little bit and doesn't have the greatest relationship with Jalen Hurts. So if like things aren't going as they're going, you have 2 guys that could be head coach candidates depending on how, the year goes. So that's something I would be concerned about. The only negativity, and it's not even negativity, but just Cam Jurgens replacing Jason Kelce. Like, Jason Kelce's a Hall of Famer. Like, those are big shoes to fill. And I'm not saying that Cam Jurgens can't do it. I'm just saying, like, Kelce took care of a lot for that offensive line. So it's going to be interesting to see that transition. Also to see if Mekhi Becton, who right now is the starting right guard, can stay healthy. But outside of that, Dobbs, I mean, like, I think Quinyon Mitchell was probably one of the best corners in the draft. It was him or Terrion Arnold to me. And to go get him and to go get Cooper DeJean, I mean, their corner room is deep. Like, I do like their corner room. So I don't have much negativity for the Eagles. It's really going to be, are they going to shoot themselves in the foot? And they don't typically do that. Like, that's not their vibe. So I don't know. I mean, there's really not much else to talk about with them outside of just talking in circles about like what could go wrong. Like, there's not a lot on paper that should go wrong.
No, absolutely. And before we close them out, I just wanted to say, because I didn't even realize until just today that Mekhi Becton was now the starting guard on the depth chart. Eagles fans, if he can stay healthy, you guys need to be doing jumping jacks for Howie Roseman. Outside of his just organized assembly appreciation for Howie Roseman. It's getting out of hand.
So let's move in, and there's been a trade, and we'll talk about it when we get to the next division. Let's move in to the Washington Commanders.
I gotta peep this trade.
Yeah, it was the Bears. It's nothing crazy. The Washington Commanders for you, Dobbs, you have them at 5-12. I have them at 4-13. I think with me, I think the Commanders are going to be a team that may find their stride later in the year. They actually start out with a pretty rough schedule. They play Tampa Bay, who I don't think is a pushover. I think a lot of people think that just because Tampa Bay over excelled last year, that they're just going to be like a pushover this year. They're still a very talented team. They play the Giants, which is going to be up in the air, but I still think what scares me against the Giants is the Commanders' O-line is very, very scary to me outside of Sam Cosmi. So I just don't trust them to keep Jaden upright in that game, at least earlier in the season. And then, they play Carolina, but all the teams they play, like literally all the teams they play, besides Arizona, Chicago, and that's it, have like really good D lines. Like their schedule is not ideal for what their skill set is. Now, with that being said, I do think there is a chance that this team could win 6 or 7 games if things go off right. I do think Jaden Daniels is going to make a lot of plays with his legs and make it very hard for teams to defend. I think, we see the issues more with the rushing quarterbacks. And I don't want to call him strictly a rusher. Like, he can throw too, but we see it more year 2 when teams get tape on them. With that being said, the floor of the Commanders roster is higher than the Giants, but I do see more more volatility with this team. And I kind of, like we were saying earlier with the Cowboys, I chose the floor, but this team could win 6 or 7 games.
No, I think that's the best way to say it. Like, and again, I think the way I looked at it, and we've talked about this a lot, but you bring Dan Quinn in the building. We see how Dan Quinn maximizes his defense. He maximizes his playmakers. More than anything, he can really maximize having, it's the best way to say this, not necessarily the most talented group of pass rushers. Like, he can still find a way to get the sacks home, right? Find a way to bring pressure where there shouldn't be pressure. That's Dan Quinn's, that's the scheme. And that's exactly what he's going to bring over to this team that's desperately lacking pass rushers right now. And I think, so you just say to yourself, look, this defense is going to be able to win this team a few games. And on top of that, I think Jaden Daniels is going to have a better rookie year than a lot of people think. I've been maybe not like higher on him than a lot of other people, but I've been pretty confident no matter what that. Look, Jaden Daniels can really surprise a lot of people this year, and kind of carry this team per se, despite they're not going to be very good regardless. But carry them to the point where you're like, okay, like Jaden Daniels is really doing that, and this team has a future. That's kind of how I can really picture this year going. But to your point, even if all that does come true, they're not going to be a good team this year, and they're not going to be a playoff team this year, and they're not. It's just about seeing that progress if you're a Commanders fan, and respect to Commanders fans where it's due. I don't think I've seen really many unrealistic Commanders fans. I think that it's pretty, everyone kind of understands the assignment. Like, let's just not be really bad. Let's just see progress, and let's understand that we have a whole new regime in the building so we can make baby steps. And if you're a Commanders fan, I don't really think you can ask for anything more than that this year, because with what you have right now, this roster is half baked at best. But to that point, there's still a lot of talent on this roster that you can keep around. And there's a lot of it that you have to shut out over the next couple of years and replace. But that's the process. And you now are in that position where you can start the process where you weren't before. So you definitely have made steps, and it's just about continuing to make them this upcoming season.
I think the biggest thing too is I think where my areas of concern are in terms of, I think this defense will play a lot better than people think because of Dan Quinn. And my concern, though, is on the offense, because I like Brian Robinson. I don't mind the Austin Eckler signing, but we talked about the O-line. But now with Jahan Dotson gone, we really have to look at this receiver room where Olamide Zaccheaus is wide receiver 2. And I like Terry McLaurin a lot, and I think he's definitely a 1 in the league. But Okay, let's go double Terry McLaurin the whole time. Where do you send the ball? Like, is it going to be a run heavy scheme? And like, I believe Cliff's run offenses were not bad in Arizona. Am I mistaken? I thought
No,
the
it
run
was
offense was
no.
decent.
The main problem with the Cliffs offense is just touch real quick. I mean, it was never like they were running the ball really like it was more positive than negative. But the problem is you always remember is it was so RPO centric and it was so right when teams would start to realize how right like the plays that they'd build off of.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
build off one play to the other where it's like we're shutting everything down that you're building off of. Like you have nothing anymore. So that's where it's gonna be interesting to see if Cliff has made that adjustment finally because we saw the story multiple years in a row. First half of the season, no one knows what to do. But once they figure it out, once they start to get the beat on you, that offense falls apart. So it's a good point.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'm very interested to watch Jaden Daniels. I do think he's gonna struggle a little bit more than he did in preseason, as all quarterbacks will. I just think, like when he audibled that route and sent him on a vertical. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know if you do that. I don't know if you can just do that in a regular season game. If you do and you snap, then go ahead. But it could look bad if a safety's watching that, comes down, picks it, and then maybe there was no safety on the play. All I'm saying is it's going to be different when the regular season hits, and he's probably not going to be able to do that.
No, that's again, that's why I want to be clear with like every fan base about their rookie. Like, let's be clear. As much as that they might show a lot of flashes this year, don't expect them, unless you're a Bears fan, don't expect them to take you to the playoffs and don't expect them to be making all pro plays this year. Yes, a lot of these guys I do really believe have very high ceilings, but back to the point of that Caleb's the only one that I think you're going to truly witness potentially like ceiling plays in year one because there's just a realistic development arc that has to happen with a lot of these other teams. It's just the bottom line.
All right, anything else for the NFC East? I feel like we spent a good amount of time on that.
No, we were cooking for that NFC East. But you know what? The NFC East always drives a lot of discussion. It's such a competitive division. There's always so much you got to talk about. Like they all tie together so well.
Competitive for two teams?
Yeah, you have to like almost tie them all together.
Competing for the top two spots and then competing for the last spot.